Good evening or morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Matt. I will be your alchemist this evening. Welcome back to the Alchemy Lab. And I am here with Katie Roome from Periapsis Press. Hello, Katie.
Hi, thank you for having me on.
Hey, thank you for coming on. For people who don't know who are you and what do you do?
My name is Katie Roome, and I am the writer for periapsispress.com, which is a review site for indie sci-fi and fantasy.
Cool, cool, cool. All right. So do you write any sort of novels yourself?
Not currently, no.
Okay.
My husband has published two, and
Hmm.
that's kind of what got us into the scene.
Right,
Was
okay.
sort of the realization this his first one came out 2019, and we realized that there wasn't anything
Hmm.
that really supported indies in the way that I was sort of envisioning.
Yeah.
There's booktubers and review bloggers, but the content is not necessarily reader focused, which is what the direction I wanted to take things. Uh,
Hmm.
they tend to talk to each other,
Right.
these communities, right? And they can sort of devolve into like generating content that's not really relevant, talking about drama. What did J.K. Rowling say? And
Hmm.
posting TBRs, which are just lists of books that you mean to read someday and you don't actually have an opinion about them yet.
Right.
So, whereas I wanted to make something that was very focused on answering the reader question, what should I read? What is available to me? What is good?
Hmm. Right. Okay. It's interesting then because you kind of approach this topic from a different angle to a lot of the other people I've had on, which who have
Very,
been, yeah, majority, at least in this sort of area, majority writers.
yes, I
And
I rub elbows with a lot of writers,
right,
and
yeah.
that's fine. It Writers are the ones who understand most what other writers need, right? Like, so
Hmm.
they definitely have a place in reviewing each other's work, and writers always start as readers, so it's not
Right.
like we can say, well, no, you can't talk about this.
Hmm.
But I do come from quite a different angle on it.
Hmm. Right, yeah. And okay, so Periapsis Press then? So it's a review site.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
uh Initially, my vision was quite a bit bigger, with Periapsis Press being kind of a catch-all term. uh we've done Well, David's published his books. We did the Periapsis Christmas last year. We're going to do it again this year. So there's a little bit of publishing, but we've sort of uh, we haven't gone all in on like being a small publisher. And the review site was where my passion lay. So that was the part of it that got up and going right away.
Right, okay. So you wanted it then to be a facet of a wider thing, but it's kind of
Originally,
the main drive at the moment, really, behind the.
yeah. And I at this point, I'm very happy right here. I've been doing it for two and a half, yeah, 2.5 years now.
Hmm.
Just the website, and that has been very rewarding. I've enjoyed that a great deal, and I feel like I am contributing something that is worthwhile and is not just shouting into the void.
Hmm.
um, and that is helping both readers and indie authors. So, and I enjoy it, right? So,
Right. Well, that's kind of the point of this as well, I think, of you meet in a tavern, is to kind of, I don't know about give back, but sort of have something where someone can come on and talk about their work, maybe in, hopefully not in spoilering detail, but in kind of a bit more detail, and maybe attract a new reader or two or three or more,
Yeah.
And I thought it'd just be a good endeavor to sort of help out indie authors, because it's so difficult to get eyes on book. I know that because I write books. It's so difficult to get eyes on them. And it's like, okay, well, I can help that, I guess, with other people, and maybe also with me by doing a show like this, which would hopefully just give it just a bit of a boost.
That is where I'm coming from too. We really saw kind of a need and thought, well, how would we approach the problem, right? And this is kind of the result of that. Plus, we wanted to have fun and make cool things, and so we're dabbling a little bit in different areas. But the review site is my passion project.
Right, and I guess that's sort of grown in. I guess as over the years, it's kind of more people have taken notice. So
Certainly.
Is it just you reviewing stuff?
Yep. And occasionally I reach out and ask somebody who has already reviewed something if they'll permit me to republish their review on my site as a guest review. But it's almost always something that I have read before or have read something else by that author. So it's very narrow. So the scope of it is all within my understanding of the works being talked about.
Right. Okay.
Which limits how much I can post, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
But I want to be able to say everything on here I stand by, so.
Right. Yeah, and there's always going to be kind of more books than there are hours in the day. So,
yes.
Yeah.
One of the joys of reading.
Yeah, I mean, one of the joys of reading, yeah, and one of the joys, and also maybe slight element of madness if you're trying to review books. Yeah.
Yeah, my TBR just keeps growing and growing, and since I've become a reviewer, right, that people know about and reach out to, it's just exponentially just keeps going.
Right, yeah, because the reviews, I've read a few of them, and they are pretty extensive reviews. It's not just like a couple of paragraphs. It's like a full. I mean, you don't spoil stuff, but it is like it's an in-depth.
I try. Yeah, so they're all positive and they're all long form. That was my initial concept, along with there being a browsable option. So part of that long form is like a reassurance to the reader, like I actually read this and I can go into detail about what I liked. And then the other half is to say, here are the things that are in the book that might attract you as a reader. But then that browsable feature, you can just click on reviews and see covers and know, well, all of these are ones that she liked. She doesn't do any that she doesn't. So I don't have to read the review. I can just, go out and get this book. And I know that she thought it was of quality. And if you trust my reputation, right?
Right. Yeah. It's at least gone through, like the book's at least gone through some scrutiny, at least.
Right. Yeah.
It's gone through a filter. So, I guess it's sort of also a bit like, I mean, I don't know if you have we probably do, I imagine, have links to where you can get the book. Right. So it's almost like a shopping website at the same time.
Yeah, I hope that people can use my site to find indies and go right into where they can buy them. Almost all of them are available on Amazon, so that's usually where I link. A couple of them also have availability on like the author's own website, and I try to link those as well. But for the sake of my own time in making each post, I try to keep them pretty similar as far as where things are going with links.
Right, yeah. And you say they're all positive?
Yes.
Okay, right. Huh. Okay. So are they all positive in the sense that okay, so they're all positive in that if you don't like something, it doesn't go on the site.
Nope. If I don't like it, it doesn't go on the site. That's just yep. Everything on there I liked, and I liked it enough to write 800 to 1,000 words about it.
Right, okay. Huh. Does that ever get awkward? If someone has like if someone posted a like request or sent you a thing and it doesn't appear and they're like, oh no.
Yeah, I have turned people down. And I have talked to people about it, and sometimes it's uncomfortable. Most of them are pretty mature about it, right? They're like, well, and I'm just one reader, right? And the website reflects my tastes. So just because I don't like it doesn't necessarily mean that nobody's gonna like it, right? Or that they won't find their audience. Most things that I don't end up reviewing, I actually don't end up finishing, just because I care about my own time. And if I can see 30%, 50%, 70% of the way through a book that this isn't going to be for me, I move on. And then I do have like a disclaimer on my website. It's like, this is like my hobby, right? So please don't contact me being like, hey, where's the review? Because like it might still be sitting in my TBR pile. I can't make any promises as to when I'm going to get to something, which I feel for like authors who are waiting. But like this is my hobby, and I let my reading whims lead me where it will.
Right, yeah. And it's sort of handy, I guess. I mean, it's handy to know in a sense if you haven't been like if it doesn't make the grade, it's handy to know as the author, okay, so at 30%, this wasn't grabbing somebody.
Sure.
It's like, okay, so maybe why wasn't it? And I suppose at the same time, like you can only, because you only have so much time in the day and so many books to read, like I imagine it's difficult to like, people might want to get into specifics. And it's like, okay, well, I can get into some, but at the same time.
Right. And I'm not, when someone sends me a book like for a review copy, right? I'm not expecting to be asked to be a developmental editor or a beta reader, in which case I would have taken extensive notes.
Right.
And I have beta read for people before, and I would want to be able to do that well if people were interested in that. But when it's going to be a review for myself, I don't like say in this very specific spot, right? Like it's more of a narrative notes.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting, like, because obviously like looking at books with a more critical eye, maybe, and also like enjoying them as a reader, but at the same time, they do have to go through that filter to get up onto the site. So that's something I guess you have in mind when you're reading.
Yeah.
So what are the things that, I mean, in a constructive sense, what are the things that stop you from, that make you go, okay, this may Okay, this is losing me.
Quality things, right? Quality things. So that's just, your basic, can I read it? And is it readable in the sense that the technical and stylistic aspects of it are not interrupting my immersive experience? That's like your basic. Other would be things that are probably most often would be thematic elements that I would say are contrary to the worldview, that the way that I perceive the world to be. And that's because I do, in my reviews, dig into themes, larger themes. And I for me, part of the pleasure of a reading experience is interacting with those themes on a deeper level, I guess. So I don't want to like throw out examples or anything, but
Obviously,
I would
yeah.
I would say one of the things that I open about with my site is it's not woke, right? So like
Right.
if you get your standard, feminist, Marxist, communist type themes in there, that's gonna frustrate me, and that would cause me to put it down. Not that I have a whole lot of those kinds of submissions.
No, I can imagine not. Yeah. Yeah. If it's because I think I haven't looked at the site in recent sort of time, so I don't know if there's any kind of disclaimer there that says that. But it's also the sense that the indie space at the moment leans pretty heavily right, or it's sort of kind of well, let's not say it leans right, because I don't think being against the sort of woke stuff is necessarily a right-wing thing. It's sort of that's obviously nonsense thing. You know what I mean? It's like a common sense thing.
Yeah, that's why I phrase it as not woke and not like right wing or conservative or libertarian or whatever. But I say just give me a good story without trying to lecture me or convert me to your opinion.
Right.
And that is enough for me.
Yeah. I get that completely. Yeah. It's something that does rip me out of books more often. Well, it rips me out of books, it rips me out of TV or film very, very quickly. So we go like, could you not? Because it's never like an organic part of the story. It's always and by the way, boom, here's we're just going to throw a bucket of rainbow paint on the camera lens, and there you go, hey, and then we're going to do a little dance, and then we're going to get back to this very serious story that we're telling. It's like, stop, don't do that, please. I don't know how much of that you got, because it's saying my internet connection is unstable.
Yeah.
I got most of it, I think, but I will watch back.
I think I got most of it.
Yeah.
But it was like pretty like condensed in places, the way that Zoom does.
Yeah.
Yes, traditional media in general has become very open about their agenda to the point where they no longer even care about making sure that they have a good story to lay it on top of. It's quite frustrating, and that's where a lot of authors are coming out of, right? They're experiencing these stories and coming out of it going, I could do better than that. And I can do that in such a way that reflects my own values and beliefs
Mm.
about the world and what is true. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of the indie movement right now.
Yeah.
That's certainly been my experience with it.
It's a big driving force of the Iron Age, it seems, which is sort of the current big
Yes.
kind of indie movement. Even though it's been, I mean, people have been back when Amazon's publishing stuff was CreateSpace, which was all the way back in 2016 or whatever, and before that, it's it yeah, I mean, I don't, yeah, I mean, I think very much the recent stuff is very much kind of, okay, we see all this, we're just going to do something completely different, almost like counter programming kind of thing. But
Yes.
there have been indie books around forever, just not in that same kind of not in that same kind of bent. Because I started writing before all that. Well, I say before. I started writing, I guess, started writing books in 2015. And
Okay.
that was in the world, in the land before Trump. I started writing.
Yeah.
And it I don't think my style particularly has changed that much. Because I try not to even put, I mean, it might slip in, on now and then, but I try and keep sort of current day stuff out of whatever I'm writing. And it slips in more a little bit. I think something like
You glitched again on me.
it'll tell me in a second that my internet is unstable. No, it's okay. It's
Here
okay.
we are.
Yeah. It's I think like the most overtly political thing I've written is probably in my sci-fi stuff. It's probably Red Saints, which is the sci-fi one of my sci-fis. And that referenced some stuff, but that's like a battle of wits kind of between, it's less sort of the left-right divide and more like the authoritarian libertarian divide. Got
Mhm.
someone very toxically at the top and someone very toxically at the bottom, and they're kind of clashing. And when they clash, what is the effect of their clash? And why? And yeah, what is the effect? And how did they even get that way? Is also kind of part of it. But I generally don't even want any of that in there. Like I just want it just
Yeah.
pushed aside.
Well, and that's the really nice thing about a lot of this indie stuff is there are some people who want to bring that to the forefront, their ideals and their experience and their sort of political version of what trad pub is doing.
Mm.
But a lot of people are really more interested in making good stories, making stories that they want to read.
Mm-hmm.
And that those stories then support themes that reflect their worldview in a way
Mm-hmm.
that is less intrusive
Mm. Right.
and
Um,
is way more fun to think about and talk about, right? You can be like, here are the elements within the story that make me think that this is what the author thinks, right? I find
yeah.
that to be really entertaining and fun to pick apart.
Mm.
And so I always do in my reviews.
Yeah. Well, I feel like in the mainstream, they haven't quite realized yet that there's more. I think they sort of sleepwalked their way into this kind of mediocrity and almost like resting on their laurels. Because for a long time, the whatever audience there was didn't really have the option of, well, I don't have to read this. I can just read something that some English guy with a YouTube channel put out instead of watching this awful Wheel of Time series that is nothing like the books at all.
Right.
And now people have that option.
Yes. And I think too, the lockdowns gave people a lot of time to invest in entertainment that they didn't normally have in their everyday life. And so sort of normies or whatever, right, kind of realized that there was a lack of quality in general traditional media, and that there wasn't just a lack of quality, but there was a lack of respect for them as viewers, as fans of the IP. So I think coming out of that, obviously a lot of them were like, well, I can do better, and became indie authors. But I think a lot of people started reaching for indies as readers as well. And I think sort of fulfilling their desire to have just good media that doesn't hate them is worthwhile. You know, you don't have to convert them to your ideals, right? Like a lot of them just want to be entertained, right? That's just tell me a fun story, and that, you know, not everything is horrible and dark and terrible.
Right. Well, particularly in fantasy, I've seen like this sort of stuff being injected in where it wasn't before. Like when I look at something like, I mean, you can probably draw plenty of political stuff out of Harry Potter or The Lord of the Rings, or I mean, Game of Thrones, probably back before it was maybe more overt, certainly in the series. You could draw some political stuff out of it, but you can also sit down and watch them and enjoy them without any of that there. And what really bugs me is that they get recontextualized now into the one that annoys me the most. And we may be about to tangent into stuff, but particularly with the Lord of the Rings, this idea that Sam and Frodo are like gay. It's like, do you all not have friends? Okay. Like this, they're friends. This is, and particularly, I think people just don't understand. Certainly, the people who are trying to insert this stuff, they don't understand how deep a friendship, particularly between two. I mean, I can only speak for men in this case, right? The friendship between two men can be a very, very deep thing. And it doesn't have to involve any kind of hanky-panky. It's just we're just very good friends. We have implicit trust in that sense. And it's also camaraderie at the same time. It's like the bonds of friendship and the bonds you can develop in conflict.
Absolutely. The two of them were going through something, right? That's the other thing. Like, yeah, you sitting in your armchair on your phone talking to people that you've never seen face to face might think that the two of them crying while embracing is a very sensual experience. But like, these guys hiked and starved and like bled together, right? Like, this is a completely different experience. Them hugging is like not a big deal.
Yeah. Do you not, have you never hugged your friend? Like, what is going on? And it's almost sad in that regard. Like, that's what you think like an in-person friendship and bond is.
Yeah. And to take that point of view and insert it into whatever you're reading, insisting that whatever the author meant is not relevant and or was suppressed somewhere in his psyche. Right? Like that, that's very unfortunate and sad that people feel like they have to do that when there's already so much richness to Lord of the Rings, especially that was intended, right?
Yeah.
But in Harry Potter, which is not even arguably far more entertainment focused and for children, right? Initially, there's already layers of meaning with like plot themes and archetypes, and there's just way more to talk about that doesn't have to do with whether or not people were attracted to one another.
Right, yeah. I with Harry Potter especially, one of the things I really like about that series, and I haven't read them in forever, but I semi recently watched all the movies again.
Nice.
Because I think my mum hadn't seen them. So we watched them all. Like we just did like every day over Christmas or New Year, I think.
Okay.
And what's great about them is they all have sort of the same kind of, obviously the same characters and the same stuff. Right. And they're slowly maturing over time. But the stories they tell, they do have like a variety in them. They're telling just different, it's different enough to keep you invested. And the fifth one, I think it is, the one with Umbridge.
Yep, that's 5.
That one is great. I forgot how good that one is.
Yeah, and maybe that one's one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah. And maybe it's partly me being a hypocrite and doing what the people who think Frodo and Sam are gay are doing. But I was watching that and going, oh my God, that's so like it's effectively a tyrant being the thought and the speech police in this school and trying to corrupt kids into being shock troops for this regime. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so relevant now.
It's laden with meaning. A woman who is described as ugly, but who has all of the trappings of femininity,
right,
goes and using an authoritarian power, right, outside political power backing her up, manipulates, targets people who disagree with her, but it's all in pink, right? It's you could really read into it.
Well, from the outside in, she's so twee and so unassuming. I think it's like, who is it who plays her in the movie? I think it's Imelda Staunton, I think, who plays her in the movie.
I don't remember her name.
Well, she's just this kind of small, slightly plump woman who's she's dressed very nicely, and she's very pink, and very twee and sort of and lurking beneath that is this monster. And and it's like it's this infiltrator coming in, and then just it's like I forgot how extreme it was that she's like physically torturing the kids, kind of like I must not tell lies, and it's being written on the skin. I'm just,
Yes.
oh God, that's, oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that happen in Hogwarts that I think just one letter home, I feel like would fix this.
Yeah. Yeah. Do they not have like an inspector that comes around and sees what's going on? Yeah. In,
but it's very interesting that she was put there with the express intention of subverting the authority
yes.
of Dumbledore, and not to improve the quality of their education, but to control what was being taught,
Right.
uh,
Yeah.
to prevent it from becoming a problem.
Mm.
And what's the first thing that she tells them, right? It's like, put your wands away, right? Like, and like those are their guns, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, it's also like it's the removal of that practical application of what they're learning.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. So we're only going to learn the theory. We're not going to do anything else.
Right.
That's it. Are we going to learn any spells? Nope.
No.
You're going to learn about them, but you're not going to learn them.
Right.
That's dangerous.
Well, and the funny thing is, like, that's the state of education right now, where it's like,
unfortunately, yeah,
just get your degree, right? And then you go and you get your experience. There was, I think just today, there was a TikTok video going around on Twitter about a girl. She's ranting in her car about how she can make more money serving sushi than actually going to and getting one of these business degree jobs that she's qualified for now with her degree. She takes a huge pay cut. It's like, yeah, because you learned about all of this stuff, but without actually getting any experience. And that's one of the things that she whines about, is needing experience. It's kind of Harry Potter in general just has a lot to say about things, whether or not like Rowling meant every single thing that we could point to, right?
Yeah.
There's interesting things that the story seems to suggest.
I feel like that. I don't know if, because your husband obviously writes. I don't know if you've talked about this with him at all. You probably have, I imagine. A lot of the theme stuff that gets into a book, for me at least, is entirely unconscious. I just think, okay, what would be okay, so here's the sort of plot as I'm kind of bullet pointing it out. Okay, so we get to here. What's the but that will happen here? And how does that link back to what's going on? I'm just trying to write a narrative that works within itself and is compelling to read.
Yeah.
And then someone will say to me, I love that theme of displacement or whatever that you put in there. I'm like, cool, yeah, cheers. I'm like, fine, yeah.
I've definitely had authors say, I never thought of it like that before. Once they read my review, and it's like, that's fine. I tried not to say in my review like the author intended me to take out this grand meaning, but stories suggest those meanings on their own, right? So that's why, although the left does a lot of this in ways that we don't like, right? Saying that the author's intention doesn't matter and that the story should speak for itself. That is still, there's an element of truth to that. There can be themes that the author intended and themes that they didn't intend.
Yeah.
And we just have to be careful about saying that those unintentional themes are the way that you should read the book, right?
Yeah. I mean, it can be very convenient to read those themes into stuff for certain reasons.
Right.
But it does, yeah, it does just, yeah. I mean, it gives me, to give the devil its due, there is that element of everyone is going to read. We are, yes, we are all individuals, and everyone is going to read their own meaning into a story. And that's, I mean, that's true.
That's
But it,
part of what we love about reading, right? Is two minds coming together to one person saying, here's a story, and the other person saying, I am going to accept this into my mind, right?
mm-hmm, right.
And bringing their own past experiences, feelings, emotions, ways that they think about things into that. And when you come out of that reading experience, what you have is going to be different from anybody else who read the book.
Mm-hmm, right.
And that's the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I think part of another thing that's sort of driven people away from the mainstream and is driving people kind of away from academia in a sense, because I think enrollment in everything is down. I think part of it is the fact that social media has allowed people to see exactly kind of who people are. And it's made I mean it's like gross where you look at it and you go, oh, that's like Simon Pegg is someone who I adore. Like so Shaun of the Dead was the one of the is the first movie of a it's the first like higher age rating movie that I got into underage
Sure.
with my dad. It was Shaun of the Dead, and I think in Britain it goes like 12A, so you can go in if you're under 12 and with your parent. But then 15 where you can't, you have to be 15 and up, and then 18 where you have to be 18 and up. And
Okay.
Shaun of the Dead, I think, is a 15 rating, or was a 15 rating in the UK. I got into it with my dad, and I loved Shaun of the Dead, and I still love Shaun of the Dead. It's great, and I love a lot of that guy's work. But when I hear him talk, it's just like, oh, it just shatters that, like, not illusion exactly, but it shatters that kind of artist separation.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
because I knew the one thing before the other, I can kind of do it. And Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz and Spaced and things like that, they're very quite formative. And I have that sort of nostalgia of youth behind it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very difficult. It's very, very difficult to kind of look at his newer stuff and be like, oh, I'll check that out, because it's like, well, I could, but
Right. Well, and I think the current public opinion about stories is that they ought to tell people what to think in some way or another. They ought to. Like, how many articles have we seen recently criticizing X fun movie because it didn't have the theme that they wanted, right?
mm,
Um the Mario movie had all
yeah,
kinds of articles about Peach because she didn't do what they wanted her to do, and so the movie failed to speak the hard things that people need to hear.
mm,
I think that comes out of the anti-bullying
it might do, yeah,
movement in, like, when I was in elementary school, middle school, like, just being like, you need to police your friends, keep them from doing bad things.
right.
um I think right now there's a lot of adults who feel that they are under some sort of obligation to
Mm-hmm.
make everybody in their circles behave.
Mm,
And
yes.
when I'm sitting down and I'm reading a book, I do not want that. I i i don't hang out with those kinds of people in general.
Mm,
So why would I subject myself to hours
right.
with somebody who is trying to change my mind about things?
Mm. There's also like projecting that attitude and that morality backwards in time to stuff that came before.
True.
Like I've gotten into so much kind of older stuff. I have a it's been a while since I've watched Hitchcock, but I've watched so many Hitchcock movies and just seeing how he kind of told stories and things like that on screen. And there was some revisionism with him, but it kind of fell away a little bit because there was stuff with Tippi Hedren that I don't know, don't have to get into. But a bigger one than that is H.P. Lovecraft.
Mm.
So I got into him like probably last year because I found on Amazon, I found his compendium of work in ebook form for like
Nice.
50p or something. And I went buying that before. I think I was looking for Lovecraftian stories because I watched the recent Color Out of Space movie.
Oh, sure.
And it was like, I think it was Halloween. It was Halloween 2021. I think I watched that. And I watched From Beyond as well, which is like from the 80s.
Yeah.
And I was like, these are both Lovecraft stories. That's interesting because they're both very different. And
Mhm.
he also did like Reanimator. I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I started looking for other Lovecraftian stories. I don't know why I didn't look for his stuff immediately, but I looked for like other things. And I eventually got to his stuff. But what I kept hearing before I even opened a page was, you know how racist that guy was, right?
Right.
That guy was so racist. And I kind of looked into it recently. I'm like, oh yeah, he was. That guy was pretty racist. I mean, it was like and then I look, well, when was he alive? Okay, he was alive. So he died young. He lived poor. He
Mhm.
was alive in the late 1800s to the early 20th century, basically.
Mhm.
And he never made really much money out of his writing. And he lived in a time of great change. And he lived through a world war and the Great Depression. And I was like, okay, so there's a whole bunch of things going on there.
Yep.
And to be honest, like having some knowledge of his work, I didn't expect him to be a chill, normal dude. It's Lovecraft. Of course, he's going to be a little bit like, But
Right.
reading his work with that in mind, reading his work, I was like, that's not coming through at all. I mean, aside
No.
from in like Call of Cthulhu, maybe a bit, but apart from that, it doesn't come through at
Yeah,
all.
you really, I feel with Lovecraft, you really have to know a lot of the like the slang in order to like pick up on the fact that he's being derogatory. But
Mm,
like it's almost always within the context of like it's not usually like there's the derogatory terms,
mm,
but the actual like racism and like in his stories is in the contexts, right? It's the good guys are these people and the bad guys are these people, that
mhm,
kind of a thing. And if you're not like thinking in terms of race, you're not going to pick up on that kind of a thing.
mm.
It's uh it's one of the, and like I only know how to explain it because I was a lit major in college and like
Right.
literally that was what I was taught how to look for.
Right, yeah. Well, like in Call of Cthulhu, I think it's the one that people cite, I think. And it's funny because it's the one that I read Call of Cthulhu and then I looked up some stuff about it. It's a story that he didn't even like. He was like, that wasn't my best work. I probably could have done better with that. But in that case, it's like the cult of Cthulhu is like like black people living in the swamps of New Orleans, and there's some derogatory stuff about that. And
Right.
And the phrase, which, I mean, the alliteration made it, and I'm quoting here, YouTube, so don't get mad at me. I'm quoting H.P. Lovecraft. The phrase nautical crops up a bunch of times. And I'm like, ooh, alliteration, but ooh. That's that kind of, ooh, that was it like, I felt it on my lips a little bit. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. That's the only one where it's overt that I've read so far. And I've read quite a few of them, you know. But in his best ones, it's not even present.
Right.
At the Mountains of Madness, not even. In fact, the counter to it, because there's a moment in that where he's looking down at this creature, this alien thing that he can't even conceptualize. And he realizes, the character in it realizes, this was just a dude like me. And just of a different form. And I read that and I thought, oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. Yes, he did a really wonderful job of getting under your skin in a way that was not just a lot of his adverbs, right? It was, but like sort of concepts, the idea of a monster that is like just a person like me, like that kind of a thing. That's enough, right?
Right.
And the idea of being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes like that is very antithetical to the idea of racism. So it, and obviously he was able to hold both views, right?
Yeah.
But like, we don't have to, right? Like, that's the thing. When we're reading his work, we don't have to lean into the derogatory terms and or whatever. Like, we can, we as readers are bringing our own experiences to it, and we can say, okay, well, that was not necessary. But like, then we can say, well, this image is still very profound and sends chills down my spine, right? So I
one
think,
of the
go ahead.
well, one of the things that has helped in that respect, kind of, well, like reading the books, is that at the beginning of each story, it has the title of it, and it has when it was published.
Oh, nice.
So it's like 1920, so like 1922 or something like that. And I'm like, wow, okay. So that's a time when the world was much, much bigger than it is now. Right. I mean, in our situation right now, right? It's morning for me. It's night for you. I'm in Kyrgyzstan, a country that most people probably couldn't point to on a map. And you're in America somewhere, I think.
Yep. Okay. Wisconsin. You could
Wisconsin.
probably get your finger pretty close.
Yeah. America. Ha. Wisconsin. It's somewhere here.
I'm certain that Wisconsin is at least 3 times bigger than
I mean, potentially. I don't know. Kyrgyzstan's bigger than I thought it was. I thought it was like a smaller place, but it's kind of huge.
Gotcha. Glitching again here.
Yeah, the symbol just came up. How's it now? Better now?
Good.
Okay, good. All right. Yeah. What were we even talking about?
Yeah, David and I was pregnant with our daughter, and we went on a summer vacation to Providence, Rhode Island. And we listened to audiobooks of Lovecraft stories. And we walked around and like did the Lovecraft tour, walking tour, and like looked at the buildings that he describes. And then we got in the car and we drove around and saw some of the country. some of the way, like, just because he has so many rich descriptions of just the land. And so we drove around. We had a really nice time, but you could feel how much closer everything felt just being in the modern world, right? We could walk from historic downtown to, like, you know, I don't know, they weren't necessarily like skyscrapers, but like they're majorly taller than anything from Lovecraft's day, modern buildings. And the closeness and the number of people around, and all of the different, we're in a city, so all of the different cultures that are there, and you feel that, like you were saying, the world was so much bigger in Lovecraft's day.
Yeah, bigger and just more unknown.
Yeah.
And it's like it's almost an empathy that I kind of have to have, or that I just have with him or with his characters, where it's like, you don't know what the heck is going on this side of the world. And
yeah,
it could be anything in your mind, and it's like, yeah, it could be.
There could be anything at the bottom of the world, or at the bottom of the ocean, or crashing into your backyard from space, right?
Right. Yeah.
And in a sense, those things still exist to us. But there's less mystery in our own backyards, I think.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And there's still the element of the unknown. I think the unknown comes now by there being so much information that some of it gets lost. And I found that being here, where there's been this whole, I don't think, whenever I asked people to guess where I was going next, they wouldn't even think of Kyrgyzstan. Even when I said it's a Stan country, so that narrows it down, it would be the last one they said. But it has its whole history and things and particularly like now, like in the last 20 years or so, of like revolution after revolution. And it's just, all of that was just missed by the Western world. And it's just fascinating getting into the history of a place that no one would even think to care about back where I live.
Sure.
Full time. Yeah. Interesting times indeed. Yeah. All right. Where do we go from here? We went on a whole tour there of sorts of things.
I don't know how we got here.
I have no idea how we got here either. This is often how I feel when I do a long form discussion with somebody, because my brain ricochets around. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Is there, so on Periapsis Press, is there something, I don't know if you have done this before in a when you've been on, I guess, on your show, because you have your YouTube channel as well, or on when you're on someone else's. What's the next, I don't know if you want to give it away, what's the next thing that's going to be reviewed?
So TJ Marquis just accidentally published his third book. He was gonna put it on pre-order, but he hit publish instead. And so I beta read that. So I got a little bit of a sneak peek at that. And I'm working on my review for that right now.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool.
I've reviewed the first two. TJ's quite prolific, so there's a lot of stuff from him, and I encourage people to check him out. Another one that I am going to review after that, and I left it upstairs on my bedside table, is Scars. Oh, drat. Jay Sheer. Oh gosh, I'm gonna say this wrong.
Written by a human.
Yes, a person, a real live person
who has a name and everything.
You guys, I can pronounce your titles usually just fine, but you guys have got to get simpler names. Smith, Johnson.
Scars by Smith Johnson. I really hope the name is.
I was right. Jay Ishiro Finney.
Ah, okay.
I got most of it. And that one's a short story, like psychological sci-fi. So that was nice. And by psychological, that's like in the like the, it's not like in the mind, but it's like the focus and the beats of the plot are driven by the character's thought process and mental health.
Ooh.
It's really a fascinating story about an astronaut who lost a limb and was grounded and given a companion animal who was an intelligent rat. So he has like a advanced technology connection, so that he gets text on his retina of what the rat is saying. Yeah, it's really fascinating story, mostly about PTSD, but it was very nicely written. I really enjoyed it.
Interesting. Oh, okay. That's interesting. I'm going to need to talk to that guy. Jay is, that could be anybody. That could be a guy, it could be a lady. I need to talk to that person.
I think it's a gentleman.
Yes. Interesting, yeah.
There's some stories you read and you just think, oh, this guy is interesting. This person, right? Like this author would be fun to pick their brain. Like, like living authors, who would you have dinner with, right?
Right.
That kind of.
Yeah. Who writes the most bonkers stuff? Or who would just be a fun person to hang out with? Yeah.
Then of course you could always just invite him on your YouTube channel, right? Like that's
right. Yeah, that's the thing. That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Can I get this person?
And then we don't have to watch each other eat either. Like
right. Yes. Right. You don't have to watch or hear each other eat. Yes. Yeah. That's interesting because I've written similar kind of stuff to that, and it's an interesting different a different route he's gone down, or she has gone down, I don't know. A different route that Jay has gone down to the route that I took with that. Yeah, that's
it was a nice little novella.
Yeah. That's another guest I can lasso and drag over. All right, cool. Okay, nice. And the great thing about it is, if they're getting reviewed, I know they've passed through the gates. They presented their papers.
I have a rather loud opinion about gatekeeping indies.
Right.
And my opinion about it is that we should have more people like me who are reviewing things and saying, I liked this. And, sort of in a decentralized, elevate the stuff that you personally would stand by as being good. And I that's I don't intend to be like the gatekeeper of the Iron Age or anything like that.
Right. Well, yeah, there do need to be more. I think when there are so few, perhaps the perception could be there, but there are certainly, I think there are more kind of cropping up. Like who have I had on?
Yes.
Who have I had on that does stuff like this? Marquise Liddell does stuff like that. Like he does a whole bunch of stuff actually on his website, but reviews is one of the things he does. I don't know. You may have reviewed.
You gotta write that down.
Yeah, you may have reviewed one of his actually. Although I don't know, you've probably reviewed so many books. If I threw a title at you, you'd be like, oh, probably, maybe, yes. It's up there somewhere.
Well, that's the beauty of the website. I can just search it.
Yeah. You get yes, and I liked it. Yeah.
Yeah. So the people that I for sure know would be TJ Markey and John Douglas.
Yes.
They both do some really nice review stuff, especially in particular videos. I think I'm the only one who does written long form and
right.
from an era of where my brain still thinks that way.
Right.
But and then I've dragged both of them and Royce from A Drink with Crazy into doing the book club with me.
Right.
So getting him to read stuff and leave reviews and stuff too. But
T. Alex Ratcliffe as well. He does video stuff. Yeah. Very handy. Yeah. Marquise's are mainly written. I don't think he's done any video review type things, but yeah, T. Alex Ratcliffe has both kind of long and short form video reviews of stuff on his channel. So is John's book out?
Not quite. He's still waiting on the cover.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
And the review of that was in Anvil, I believe.
Anvil 2, yep.
Anvil 2.
Yes. So yeah. I have to sit on it. I can't publish it until my exclusivity runs out, but that's okay because he hasn't published it yet.
Right. Yeah, that's something I'd like to get him back on if possible when the book's out. Yeah. Because that was a fun chat. That was a fun chat with John. It's nice.
Yeah, okay. I was there. I watched it for when it for was it live or was it pre-recorded?
Oh, they're all pre-recorded. Yeah, they're all pre-recorded. I don't do live at the moment because I don't exactly know how it works.
Sure.
I'm a minor Luddite when it comes to technology.
I looked at YouTube and was like, that looks like too much work. And then I realized I could just stream everything and never look at it again. And that's the route I decided to go.
Yeah. You pick a street, one of the streets, and yeah, it's live streets or pre-recorded streets.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched the one that you put up with John, I think right away. Because I knew who he was. And then when I was looking at your channel earlier today, I was like, oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that guy. Right. So I was like, oh, he's interviewed a ton of people that I know.
Yeah, there's been a few. Yeah, there's been quite a few. What is it? This is 27. So yeah, it's Yeah, it's been quite the journey, and it's nice to touch base with people and kind of pick
Yeah,
brains and things like that.
it's cool. I
Mm.
I think that having lots of different ways for people to discover and interact with creators, right? People who are making cool things drives interest
Mhm.
in what they're making, right?
Mm.
And getting them to talk about things in an organic setting is far far more interesting than like Twitter, like write your blurb in 3 sentences or tell me what your OC's favorite color is, right? Like nobody but writers read that stuff, right?
Yeah. Right. Awesome. Okay, so where can people find you and find your various
My various stuff.
things? Yeah.
Periapsispress.com is the website. Periapsis Press on YouTube, at Red Hedge Dragon on Twitter and Instagram. And I think that's it. Trying to remember.
Mhm.
I've tried a lot of different social media stuff and with varying degrees of success. But those are the main ones.
All right. Awesome. Cool. Well, obviously you can find me here at the Alchemy Lab. Also at Drunk Wordsmith on YouTube. Also on Minds at Matt Waterhouse Author. And on Instagram, I think with the same. Facebook, I don't know. And on Substack at mattwaterhouse.substack.com, where you can read about this weird country that I'm in. And also, there's some short stories and things on there, a couple of extracts of things. So, yeah. All right. Well, Katie, thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. And I'll see you all next time.